Beat through 2023, just one race in which he's dropped any points. That was the Tissot Superpole race at the Indonesian round. He had an incident and failed to score. Toprak Razgatlioglu, then the only race winner apart from this man, Alvaro Bautista, who's looking to do the hat-trick this afternoon. This is how he did the job in the Superpole race this morning.
Yeah, and for Alvaro, we saw it in yesterday's race as well, just what he was able to do to come through from the second row of the grid after his penalty. This move on Jonathan Rea, you can see they're just able to carry the speed on the exit of the corners and then make the move through there. And for Alvaro, it's never easy to win races, but it's certainly a lot harder whenever you think back to the difficult days that he had, whether it was on the Honda, the second half of 2019. You work just as hard, probably harder, for those tough days. But these are the days you have to enjoy, and Ducati do enjoy when they still have those race victories with Alvaro.
Yes, that Spanish flag looking well and truly worn as Alvaro Bautista made his way round. That's probably through overuse. He's had plenty to celebrate in 2023, and he's looking to add more, as I alluded to in the introduction. Another race victory this afternoon for Alvaro Bautista will move him on to 40 and Ducati on to 400. They certainly have been the dominant force in the history of this World Championship. The recent dominant force, Jonathan Rea, has had a tough time of things this season thus far, but he has been the only man really to take the fight to Alvaro Bautista this weekend. Bautista even said that he saw more pace from Jonathan Rea than he expected in race one. He was able to dredge it up from somewhere, perhaps from the history books. 17 race victories here in Assen for Jonathan Rea. He'll be bidding to add to that this afternoon, but it's going to be a tough ask.
He was there talking to his electronics engineer, and they know that they just need to maximize everything that they have available to them. If Johnny's able to come away with 3 second places in this race, from this race and from this weekend, then you'd have to look at it and say it's been a weekend where they got everything they could from their package.
Yes, a little bit like 2019, when so many times Jonathan Rea was able to finish second to Alvaro Bautista. At the moment, Jonathan Rea is fourth in the championship. The man directly in front of him in the standings is Andrea Locatelli. Locatelli 10 points back from Razgatlioglu, but 15 up on Rea, and that's through sheer consistency from Locatelli.
Yeah, Locke has been really impressive in the top 5 all the way through the season, third in the championship standings, like you said, Alex. And what we've seen from him is a rider that just seems to get the most out of himself each weekend, and that's all you can ask, particularly whenever you're in that role as being the support rider to a rider like Toprak.
Yes, and he's done even a little bit more than that at times. Just being 10 points back from Toprak, he's been able to beat him on occasions and outscore him at times during the Phillip Island round, the Australian round, the season opener. This is Alex Lowes. Now, Lowes is out of position in terms of the championship, down in 10th, but 4th position has been pretty much where he's been through this round. He is knocking on the door of those podium places, just needs to find a little bit extra over the course of race 2 this afternoon.
Yeah, through this round and most of the season he's been up there in those positions, but the Kawasaki really is struggling with front tyre life. We talked to Jonathan Rea on Thursday about the issues that affected them in the heat of the opening 2 rounds of the year. It's affected them here as well. Obviously for Rea, he's been able to still come away with his second place finishes, but for Lowes, in the middle of a bigger battle and a bigger group, it's been a lot tougher to keep that front tyre life, and he struggled with that yesterday.
Danilo Petrucci, the only man who qualified inside those top 9 positions in Superpole, to have lost out in the Superpole race earlier on today. He doesn't like the format. He hasn't yet managed to score over a 10-lap distance, and even over an 8-lap distance earlier on today, he couldn't make the difference. So he's been relegated back to the 4th row of the grid. Hardly disastrous for him, and we have seen him perform well in the longer races, particularly in the Indonesian round last time out.
Yeah, single lap pace through the first 3 rounds. 3rd row of the grid's being where it's at for Petrucci. Needs to make that step in the short Superpole race and also in the longer races. So for Petrucci, if he's able to come away with 8th, 9th, 10th place finish in this, that's probably a pretty good result for him, because he doesn't look like he's got the pace to be able to make that jump towards the likes of Domi Agate or some of the other riders a little bit further up.
Well, no doubting who the fans will be supporting here. He has been a super sport race winner. He has been a world champion, of course, in that class as well, and very much the Netherlands' favourite son, Michael van der Mark. He's on just 3 points so far this weekend, and he's got the tough task of coming through from the 5th row of the grid, but he'll be giving it everything, as he always does, particularly around this this venue. This is Axel Bassani. He's 5th in the championship standings. He is just 7 points back from Jonathan Rea. He's been passed by Rea over the course of this weekend, but he is still significantly 18 points ahead of Michael Ruben Rinaldi, who failed to score in that Superpole race earlier on today, and Rinaldi's now dropped down to 7th in the championship classification. A really difficult weekend by contrast to Bassani.
Yeah, it has been a difficult weekend for some of the riders out there. Bassani, with that penalty from the Superpole session, meant that he's had a bit of recovery work to do, but this morning he was able to come away with that 6th place finish. If he can get himself into the top 6, top 5 in this race, that's going to be a good effort. I think probably 5th is probably the goal for him right now, and stick with Locatelli, see if you can get into a fight at the end of the race. Yes,
both Alvaro Bautista and Axel Bassani were given a punishment for slow riding through the Superpole session, and that penalty was served in race 1, so Bassani having to fight his way through there, but he won't have as many positions to make up this time around, starting from P6. Toprak Razgatlioglu a little bit later into his pit box by the looks of things, but he is now just about ready to go, and he said yesterday in an interview his dream for the weekend is to walk away as a race winner here in Assen, given everything that's gone on over the last couple of years. It's always been in race 2, so can he put those gremlins behind him after he was wiped out by Garrett Gerloff, had a collision with Jonathan Rea in race 2 last year. He's just got his fingers crossed for a little bit of good fortune this time around.
I hate to write off Toprak because you underestimate him at your peril, but I think it is a dream if he's going to be able to win this race, because that's the gap to Bautista, but also Rea's had an edge on Toprak as well. Maybe Toprak's going to be able to get himself up into P2, but to be able to go with the race winner from the opening couple of races is going to be really tricky, and you'd have to say for Toprak, it is just about trying to make sure you're able to stay on the podium. Just about Toprak being a little bit delayed there compared to some of the other riders going out. We saw Lekuona go straight out, but pit lane is open for 5 minutes for the riders to get themselves to the grid. That also means that you can roll down through pit lane to do a second siding lap. Obviously not too important in dry conditions like this, but you do have 5 minutes to get there, to get to the end of pit lane and then get out onto the grid.
Yes, and therefore Toprak Razgatlioglu can afford to take his time. Later, but not late, as we see the riders making their way around. Garrett Gerloff here. We were just talking about him and his incident with Toprak Razgatlioglu. Doesn't seem that long ago, but it's a couple of years now since he tried to put that behind him. And the BMWs generally evenly matched through 2023. Loris Baz, coming back from an injury, has been the one slightly on the back foot over the course of this round, and understandably so. And we'll see what the balance of power is between the BMWs over the course of this race.
Yeah, and I think for Loris, obviously missing out in the track time this morning from the Superpole race is a bit disappointing, but it also keeps him a little bit fresher for the longer race as well.
Yes, I was thinking that earlier on when it happened, actually, that he was unlikely to make the top 9 from where he was anyway, given the run of form and the fact that he hasn't really had the pace. Understandably so, he's a little bit behind the others, and now we pick him up making his way down pit lane.
And that looks like a rider that's already been out on track. So Loris is doing a second siding lap here, so he's coming down pit lane. Hopefully he'll be able to go out there and just make sure that everything's running smoothly. So good decision by him and from the Bonovo squad to do that.
Yeah, just running in the bike after mechanical problems earlier on, and he has been beset by mechanical difficulties this weekend. Lost most of his running in free practice 1 as well with engine troubles.
Yeah, and for Loris it's been a tricky one, but at least he's back out there and able to get the experience of being back out in the bike. And Catalonia, you'd imagine in 2 weeks' time, is going to go a lot better for him than what Aston has.
Yes, and fingers crossed that this weekend serves its purpose. Good to see Isaac Viñales out there just in front of this man, Philip Ertl, on track. Viñales was forced to retire to the pit lane with a mechanical problem in the Superpole race, so the team have been able to get that turned around to get him out on track as well. And as I said, good to see.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a case of, for the teams, when you have a technical issue, there's always a question mark until you're able to get back to the grid for the next race. But at least for Viñales and for the Petticini team, they've been able to get themselves out there. But it has been a tricky weekend for them as well. Obviously, first race back, and a lot to get used to once again.
Looking pretty busy, isn't it, down on the grid? And this Dutch round, always a popular one.
It has been busy here as well. I was chatting to Gordon Ritchie, the journo, in the media centre, and Gordon was saying that it took him an extra 15-20 minutes to drive into the track this morning because of the traffic. So good race day crowd here on the Sunday.
Yes, and we are now building up to the 21 laps ahead of us. This is the Alex Lowes with problems. He's in the gravel trap.
8, that looks like, for Lowes,
and he is back on the bike, and Stone's being kicked up as he tries to get out. The risk, of course, of being beached. He's being dragged out now by the marshal, so that should spare him some of that. Far from ideal preparation for this race for Alex Lowes.
It's digging in there. You can see his crew chief Marcel Dwinker, and then Flori Marino there as well. They're going to get that bike onto the service road, and then for Lowes it's to try and get it back to the pits. But you can see the bike was very much embedded in the gravel trap there.
Yeah, Lowes was struggling to try and ride it out, and eventually he's now walked away from it. So bad news as far as Alex Lowes is concerned. He's due in P4 on the grid, and for the moment at least we've got a vacant slot. A little bit of time though for him to get himself sorted. We'll wait and see what transpires with that, but far from ideal preparations, as I said, for Alex Lowes.
Yeah, we'll wait and see if we can get an up-to-date replay of what happened there for Lowes, but you can see his crew down there on the box just on the right of shot, and they're going to be waiting to see whether or not he's able to get himself back to the grid.
Yes, they were watching it on the big screen, so they had obviously not twigged yet as to why Alex Lowes hadn't quite made it up to the start line, but we were one step ahead on that one. Here's a look at your grid then, starting with the front row. We've got Alvaro Bautista, Jonathan Rea and Toprak Razgatlioglu. That's the order they finished in Superpole, the order they finished in race 1, the order they finished in the Superpole race earlier on today. Will it be the order they finish in race 2 as well? Bautista beaten just once through this 2023 campaign, is your points leader by a 51-point margin ahead of Toprak Razgatlioglu.
Yeah, it looks dark from that camera down on the grid. It's a lot brighter out here at Assen, and you can see here this is much more reflective of the conditions we have.
And this weekend has been much more reflective of the pace we're used to seeing from Jonathan Rea. Took a record 25th podium around this Assen venue, his 30th start at this TT circuit, and 2 second places for him, looking set to be his best scoring weekend in 2023 thus far.
That's important for Lowes. He's been able to get that bike restarted, which means he should be able to get to the grid. The team can do if there's any repair work that needs to be done on the grid, they can change the tyres, and hopefully for Lowes, even though it's obviously going to have set his heart racing at this stage, he'll be able to get to the grid, settle down, and then get himself ready for the race.
Toprak Razgatlioglu here, 3rd position on the grid, and 2 third position results for him thus far this weekend. He hasn't been off the podium since race 2 of the Australian round, when he just got caught by Alex Lowes going down. So Razgatlioglu looking for his 90th Superbike World Championship podium this afternoon. Tissot Superpole Award going to Alvaro Bautista for his victory in the Superpole race. Toprak Razgatlioglu, though, has done the lion's share of the scoring in the Tissot Superpole Award with his race victory at the Superpole race at the Indonesian round.
Yeah, Harry Leveresen there, the Dutch world champion in track cycling, able to give that Tissot prize, but for Lowes it's straight back to the pit box.
So presumably a mechanical problem that needs a little bit more work than just something basic for Lowes.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see if we can get a replay of what happened for him, but it was down at turn 8 that he had that issue, and that's going to leave an empty spot on the 2nd row of the grid.
This is Andrea Locatelli, who starts from P5. He qualified P6 originally, 4th position in race 1, 5th position in the Superpole race, and he's maintaining that run of top 5 finishes throughout this 2023 campaign that have helped him to 3rd in the championship classification. 88 points, just 10 back from Razgatlioglu. That's no mean feat. So the national anthem of the Netherlands is completed as we wait to get underway now with race 2 this afternoon. Dramas for Alex Lowes, but otherwise a pretty straightforward build-up to the action. And we're looking forward now to continue on through our presentation of the riders in position. This is Alvaro Bautista, who starts from pole. Jonathan Ray alongside him P2, and Toprak Razgatlioglu third. Second row of the grid for Alex Lowes, Andrea Locatelli and Axel Bassani. And on row 3, Dominic Egerter, Scott Redding and Xavi Vierke. Still furious work going on for Alex Lowes.
Yeah, just working on getting that bike ready for a pit lane start.
Second row of the grid then here with Axel Bassani. He originally qualified in P8. He was relegated 3 positions further back for slow riding in the Super Pole session. He managed to fight his way through for P5 in race 1. 6th position in the shortened Super Pole race this morning. One of his better results actually over short distance races, and he therefore starts 6th on the grid.
Yeah, and for Bassani it's about trying to make sure he's able to get himself up into those top 5 spots. Obviously with no lows on the second row of the grid, that 6th is effectively 5th on the road now.
Third row of the grid with Dominic Egerter, Scott Redding and Xavi Vierke. This is Redding. Brilliant performance from him in the Super Pole session to qualify as high as P5, and he was genuinely there for pace in the first half of race 1. Dropped dramatically back in the final third, though eventually ending up in 10th position. He was 8th in the Super Pole race, and he starts from the same position here. Yeah,
and for Scott, the opening stages of the race really were very impressive. Pace looked good, and it's now just about trying to make sure he's able to manage that pace all the way through the race. The last third of the race yesterday really was a struggle.
Dave Goddard on the grid. What have you got for us?
I've got Dominic Egerter with us. Dominic, your best ever World Superbike result yesterday. Looking to better that here today.
Yeah, I hope so. We're starting again in the same position, but I think my sprint race was one of the best. And yeah, I hope we can make 2-3 laps better than yesterday, because I felt a little bit back. So in the end we are quite strong, and I hope we can be more in the front group than going backwards.
Thanks, Dominic. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the race.
We will enjoy it, and Dominic Egerter will hope to enjoy it as well, starting from 7th position on the grid. One of only 2 riders, independent riders, to have scored points earlier on in the Super Pole race. Egerter's been there or thereabouts for pace right the way through, where he was strong through Friday, as was his teammate Remy Gardner.
Yeah, it's been an impressive start to the season for the double Supersport World Champion. He's adapted well to the bigger bike, and he knows that now that we're back to the European rounds, it's about trying to get that step-by-step progress for him and make sure that he turns those top 7s, top 8s into top 6s, top 5s, and then try and challenge for a podium.
Work ongoing for Alex Lowes, but meanwhile, as far as Dominic Egerter is concerned, just lost a few positions early in race 1. He was down in 13th by lap 2, so the key for him here is going to be to get a good start and take advantage of that 7th position on the grid this time around. Completing that row 3 is Xavi Vierke. Really important performance from him, because he only qualified in P12 in the Super Pole session. He's made up 3 positions on the grid for race 2 this afternoon, and we know that as the tyre comes in, as everything warms up, he gradually improves as races go on.
Yeah, and for Xavi, he's been the better performing Honda rider so far this season, so for him, he needs to maintain that form.
Yes, he is on 49 championship points. His teammate here, Ike Lekuona, on 33. Only 11 points from him in Indonesia last time out. He's yet to score here in Assen after a crash in the opening race of the weekend. He was 11th in the Super Pole race. He starts from that same position on the grid here. Also on that row number 4 is Danilo Petrucci. And Petrucci will be starting from P10 between Vierke and Lekuona. Petrucci was 9th in race 1. He doesn't favour that Super Pole race format. He struggled to 15th earlier on.
Yeah, and for Petrucci, it's about trying to make sure that you can get yourself into the top 7 or 8, and that'll be a decent performance by him. We know that obviously the likes of Aguilar and the Yamahas are going to be a bit of a stretch. Remy Gardner, though, has had a pretty decent weekend too. He's been able to get himself up into the top 10 for most of the weekend, including actually topping the times in pre-practice 3. So that was for the first time this season.
Yes, Remy Gardner, who qualified P11 originally, 12th position for him in the Super Pole race. He's been bumped one down because of Xavi Vierke making progress, but he was 8th in race 1, just a couple of positions seconds and a couple of seconds behind teammate Dominic Egerter. This is Loris Baz, put in an awful lot of work to be here in time. He was originally told it was going to be a good 6 weeks before he could even think about bearing weight on that leg, but he's rushed better than doctors' expectations to be here this weekend. He's given it his all. Would be really nice from a neutral's perspective to see him get some rewards and perhaps at least a point on the board from race 2 here this afternoon. Had mechanical problems in FP1, retired earlier on today, so just in need of a little bit of good fortune. Alongside him, Philip Ertl, we saw there. He's been 14th in everything from the Superpole session to the 2 races thus far, and he'll start from the same grid position here. Opportunity to head down to the grid, just 5 minutes till start time with Dave Goddard.
Yes, I'm with Andrew Pitt, crew chief for Andrea Locatelli. Andrew, Locker's been brilliantly consistent so far this year, and surely that first win not far away.
Yeah, well, that's his target, and that's our target for sure. But the guys at the front aren't waiting around for him. But here this weekend, the pace has been good. Everything's been good. He just needs to get away with the front guys on the first 2-3 laps. He can't let the gap happen on the first lap. So that's our target. Good start and go with the front guys.
Great stuff. Best of luck for the race. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're back to the grid with Michael Ruben Rinaldi. He'll be starting from 16th position, and Rinaldi really has been one of the big stories of this weekend thus far, described race 1 as the worst result of his career, all the way down in 15th position, qualified 16th. That's where he starts here as well. Did make some progress at least to 13th, but was never really in contention for a top 9. So Rinaldi, a top 10 I think would be a satisfactory result, just to avoid ending this weekend in utter misery.
I think a trip home is a satisfactory result for him. Just to move on from this weekend, it's been really tough for Rinaldi, and if he's able to get himself up into the top 10, it's a very good performance given how the weekend's gone up to this point, but obviously a very disappointing weekend as a whole.
Yes, Rinaldi starts from P16. Ahead of him Loris Baz, Philip Ertl and Michael van der Mark. Behind him Garrett Gerloff, we just saw there. Gerloff had some decent late race pace to come through for 12th position. He was 17th in the Superpole race, same position on the grid here. Bradley Ray completes your 6th row, and another promising performance from him in Superpole race earlier on.
Struggling with front tyre life over the course of the longer race yesterday, so we'll see how Brad does now with a little bit more experience for this race.
Baldassari, Sykes and Granado, row 7. Row 8, Viñales, Ryu and Shireen. And row 9, a single rider, Oliver Koenig, completing your